Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Saturday morning Thanksgiving edition mini Zoom class. Today we're going to make a cute little luminary. And when I mentioned that to Matt this morning, he's like, what the heck's a luminary? Well, a luminary is really just going to be a cute little box that you can put a tea light inside of. Now I'm using the LED ones. I just picked these up from the dollar store. So that you don't burn the paper around it, but you can just use this little tea light, and we're going to create some really pretty panels to go on the side so that the light can shine through and create some really pretty looks. Today we are using alcohol inks, and I have just chosen a couple of fall colors that I'm going to be using today, but this technique will work with any colors that you choose. I would just recommend that you try to pick ones that aren't going to turn into brown. So green and red will actually turn into brown when it starts to mix. You want to use kind of, if you're thinking about color wheel and going back to primary school, you want colors that are kind of on either side of each other on the color wheel. So that's why I've got reds and oranges, and then I just got a little hint of green that we can add at the end. Now today I will confess that I am not an alcohol inks expert. Like many things, I am a wannabe expert, but I saw some really cool techniques on Pinterest and thought that it would be perfect for this project that we're going to make today. So if you have some acetate or if you have some vellum, I'm going to show you some demonstrations on both different types of, I'm going to call it paper, but types of media, and you can decide which look that you like the best, or it depends on what materials you have handy. So I was just playing around, and this is the alcohol ink on the acetate, and then this is on the vellum. The vellum doesn't seem to, the acetate gives you lots of playtime because it's slick and slippery. The vellum seems to soak it in a little bit better, but I kind of like that look that it ends up with. So I will leave that up for you to decide. I'm going to now set these aside and get out my little pieces to play with. I am working on my Tim Holtz glass mat, and typically when I do alcohol inks, I just work on the glass mat because it's so easy to clean up, especially with alcohol inks. You can just spray it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, or you can use a little bit of hand sanitizer, even though that's still quite precious these days. But for today's purposes, I'm also throwing a craft mat on here because I found when I was doing my practice ones on the glass mat, the black surface made it really hard for you guys to see. So if you only have a craft mat, that's fine. If you only have a glass mat, that's fine. If you want to put both together, that is also fine. So I'm going to start with my 3 pieces of acetate. And I also asked you to cut some cardstock. We're going to prep that and get that ready once these are drying. So let's play with the alcohol inks first, and then we can let them set aside. Some brands of acetate have a film on either side of the acetate, and I will tell you that's probably the hardest part of this whole exercise, is getting that film peeled up, and I probably should have done this ahead of time. Let me get my pokey tool and see if I can peel this up. So just double check your acetate to see if you've got a film on it. Come on. There we go. And some of them have it on both sides. So you can tell when the film has been removed because it doesn't have that cloudy look to it. And I know mine has it on both sides. So I'm going to peel that off too. Let's see if I can quickly get the other 2 done. That's what happens when you don't have great fingernails either. There we go. And working just on the corners, if you are using a pokey tool, that's the best part because it's going to get covered up by the project. Come on. So just to show you the difference, I don't know if it's going to show up. This one still has the film on it. This one you can barely see on the camera, so that's how you can usually tell whether you have to peel that or not. Need the Jeopardy music playing while I'm trying to peel this up. There we go. No pressure. We got it. So I'm just going to spread these out here on my craft sheet. Oh, look, you guys can see it quite well. And I'm just going to start with one of my colors. And you can't see them off to the side here, but on the glass mat, there is a little grid area that you can use for watercoloring and that kind of thing. I like using that when I've got my alcohol ink, so that way I can put my lid in one square and make sure that the, here, let's do it this one here that's on the camera. Put my lid in one square and then I'll put my bottle in the other one in the next square, because you do want to be able to put the proper lid back on the proper bottle. So I'm just going to start by dropping some alcohol ink on my pieces of acetate. A little goes a long way. It's always better to just start with a little bit and then you can add. And you can see how it's already kind of blooming and doing some really cool things. The other thing, if you have it handy, is some paper towel, just in case it does start going off the side. But now I'm going to go in with the orange. And you can drop it right even on top of other circles because it'll react. Oh, I'm just gonna, you can leave your alcohol inks open for a little bit if you're still working, because honestly, it takes a lot of time to be taking these lids on and off. So here, oops, that one came out really fast. Maybe some more over here. There we go. I think I'm going to leave the green just for now. We'll see how these start to play. And then you can move it around and do some neat things with it. So get those colors all blending. But it's also kind of neat to get, try to lift this one carefully, keep the circle, oh, we can't see it under my, try to keep some of those circular marks as well. Now, if you get playing and you feel like you've got too much going on and you want to, or here I don't have, it seems like everything's kind of blending together. This is where I might go in and drop just a little bit of green. And so you can see with alcohol inks, you do have a little bit of play time. And it's doing some neat stuff there, doing its magic. Or alternatively, if you wanted to lighten it a little bit, you can use your alcohol blending solution in that same way. So let's just, can do, and it does some fun stuff. And you know what, now I've got too much of a white spot here, so let me drop a little bit of red back in. It really is a very imprecise medium in that you can play and just move things around, and it's so organic and can create some different looks. The last thing I'm going to show you, and then we'll just set it aside and show you on the vellum. I've got a little mister just with some rubbing alcohol in it. You do want it to have a higher percentage in that rubbing alcohol, which might be hard to find. I'm hoping it's not in scarce resource right now, but then you can do this. Come on. Make sure the nozzle's pointing away from you. There we go. And you can see how that's all kind of bubbling and reacting, and then it will settle out again. I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. There we go. Whoops. Or you have accidents like that. There are no accidents in crafting, right? Let me grab my paper towel. Just so I don't put my hand in it later. But you can see how it's creating all these different kind of mottled and collage. It looks like, it really does look like a forest full of those fall colors that are out there and starting to come into play. And move them around. All right, I'm going to set these aside to dry, and they don't take super long to dry on the acetate. This one, my little sample one here that I did, I did this at about 8:30, so maybe half an hour ago, and it's quite dry to the touch. If you do have some areas, again, another fun thing is you can go in and just kind of dab it with your paper towel. If there are big pooly areas that you want to dry up. But there you go. So that's what it looks like on acetate. So I'm going to move that up here. And I'm going to grab my 3 pieces of vellum. Now, in case I didn't tell you off the top, and if you don't remember from the email, these are just, I cut these at 3 7/8 by 3 7/8 so that it can fit in our 4-inch box that we're going to make. The other option you could do is keep your piece large, make a great big background, and then cut it apart. So 2 different options for that if you don't like working on the little squares. So you saw how with the acetate, it all kind of spread pretty quickly. I'm going to do this just the same kind of process here with the vellum, but because it's a different medium that we're working on, it's going to give you a different look. So that's my yellow. There we go. Then my orange. You can be as controlled or not as you wish. And I do find that this yellow does lighten as it dries. So even though right now it kind of looks like it blends together, but I like how it's got kind of these sharper edges. It looks more like a splotch than a balloon. And once again, make sure I don't get my lids mixed up. Now I can move them around a little bit. Let them all come together. I can, where did my little spray bottle go? Is this the one that worked? Yep, okay. I can spray on these guys too. Try not to get your other ones. Again, the key with the spray is making sure the nozzle is not pointing at your face. And I'm just gonna let these settle out. Maybe this is where I can bring some green in. And there you have it. So I've just tried to kind of cover my areas here. It's okay if it doesn't cover the full square. It just gives you a different look in your project. There's lots of red. Let's get some orange. Dibble dabble, we're just playing around here. And there you have it. So my vellum is curling a little bit, so that's why it's kind of pooling in the middle. You can try and bend it the other way. There's some cool stuff happening there. Just dab off some of the pools just so that it can dry a little bit faster. When it comes to alcohol inks, paper towel is one of your best friends. And look at kind of the neat pattern that it can create depending on what stage of drying you're at and how much you take off. Got some neat stuff going on. All right, so hopefully you're all with me on that and you've created some fun backgrounds. Definitely, it's a lot of fun to play with and see what happens with the alcohol inks. Once again, I am so far from an expert on alcohol inks, but I love how it looks. And it's so forgiving in terms of it's supposed to be very fluid and organic looking, that nobody will know that you really don't know what the heck you're doing. In my case anyway, some of you probably have far more skills than I do. I know Alexis really loves to play with the alcohol inks, and we're looking at doing a full-on alcohol ink class in November. But for right now, we're just going to play. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cap up my inks because I'm done with them. You can tell I'm having fun because I'm covered in it. When it comes to clean up with alcohol inks, anything that is alcohol based is helpful. So whether you have hand sanitizer or even just some rubbing alcohol, that will help you clean up your surfaces and your hands. Of course, I did not think to bring any sanitizer upstairs with me, but that's okay. The other thing that works really awesome on alcohol ink, and when I was playing around, I had it all over my fingertips. I went down to the bathroom and used my scrubby. This is an all-natural soap that has that scrub brush built right in, and it really helps me get my hands clean. So I don't worry too much. If you are worried about mess or you've got a really nice, expensive manicure, which I don't, you can always use rubber gloves too. All right, so let's go on to our cardstock. I'm going to move this off to the side. Right here on the floor beside me. Let those dry. I'm just going to spray down. This is just that rubbing alcohol. Give it a quick wipe. Oh, sorry, earthquake. And I can go back and clean that afterwards too. It's not one of those things that you necessarily have to clean up right the second that you make the mess. Okay, moving my glass mat. I've lost 2 of the feet on my glass mat, so I just put a little bit of foam underneath. And now what you want are your 2 pieces of cardstock. They measure 4 by 8.5. So if you don't already have those pre-cut, go ahead and cut those out. 4 by 8.5, 2 pieces. Once you have those pieces cut, we are going to do a little bit of scoring. So grab your scoreboard, and it's super easy. You're going to take your 4 by 8.5. You're going to put it in your scoreboard horizontally, so sideways. And we are going to score at 4. And as I always say with scoring, you're much better off to do it light and do it a couple of times than to push really hard. So a first score line was at the 4-inch mark. The other score line is going to be at the 8-inch mark. Easy peasy. No 8s, no 16ths. Just score at 4 and at 8. You're going to do the exact same thing to piece number 2. We're going to score at 4. Sorry, put it in horizontal. We're going to score at 4. And we're going to score at 8. And that's it for the scoring. So your scoreboard can tuck away. If you fold along your score lines, you probably can start seeing where we're going to be going with this. So on each piece, you have 2 square panels and a little narrow strip. The narrow strip is what's going to be attaching to the second piece to make our box. But before we do that, we have to cut the little windows out of the sides. So if you've got it standing here, just kind of in your mind, think about which panel is going to be the front. And I would recommend that it is one of the end pieces. So if I'm looking here, I'm just going to grab my paper clip that I have sitting here, but if you have a post-it note or whatnot, I'm going to mark this one as the front, which means the other end panel is going to be the back. We're not going to cut a window in this one, just so that we've got a nice solid piece at the back. Then these 2 are our sides. So I'm going to show you 2 different techniques for cutting the windows. It kind of depends on what tools you have and what you have available. If you don't have any punches whatsoever, I'll show you how to cut the window with your paper trimmer. But if you have punches, you can use that too. So my vision or my plan is I'm going to cut a square out of my front panel. So I'm going to grab my paper trimmer. And for this technique, you kind of do need more of a sliding trimmer, or alternatively, you could use just a ruler and your X-Acto knife. So I'm going to start by putting my piece of paper in my trimmer with that front panel go on the right-hand side and the narrow panel on the left. I'll take my paper clip off now so it doesn't get in the way. With my paper trimmer, and I think most slidey trimmers have this to some degree, I have measurements off to the right. So ultimately, I want to create a 1/2 inch border around the outside. So I'm going to take this end here, and I'm going to line it up at the 1/2 inch mark on the right side of my cut. So I'm just going to line it up at the 1/2 inch. Now I know that my piece is 4 inches wide, but I want a 1/2 inch at the top and a 1/2 inch at the bottom. So I'm going to start my blade at 3.5 inches. I'm going to stand up so I can see if I can bring this a little bit closer here. So I'm going to line up the handle on my blade with the 3.5 inch mark, making sure everything else doesn't slide. I'm going to push down so that the blade goes into the paper, and then I'm only going to go up to the 1/2 inch mark at the top. So that way you have a cut that doesn't go all the way to the top and doesn't go all the way to the bottom. Going to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise. And I'm going to do the same thing. So line it up at the top, line it up at the 1/2 inch mark here, start at 3.5. And this is where it starts to get easier because I'm just going to go up to where it meets the previous cut. So now we're starting to get that little window coming out. This one is tricky because you've got a big area here, but we're just going to turn it 90 degrees again. I'm going to line up that fold with that 1/2 inch line. For me, it's the big long line that's here on my trimmer. So as long as my fold lines up with that line, I'm good to go. Start at the 3.5 inch mark and go up till it meets the cut. And we've got one side left. And again, this is where our big piece is going to kind of get in the way, but we also have the top and bottom already lined up. So in this case, you don't necessarily need measurements. You're going to line it up with the bottom cut. Can you see that? And you're going to slide it up to the top cut. And voila, you now have your window for the front of your luminary. Now, if you don't have any punches or you want to keep your windows nice and big, you can go ahead and do that same technique right here beside it for that one side panel. And then over here on your other piece, you're going to do your other side panel, which is the panel that's by the small fold. But if you want a bit of a cheat, this is where your punch comes into play. I've just got a 2-inch circle. Probably don't want to go any bigger than, say, 2.5 or 3 inches. If you have dies, you could do the same thing. I'm just going to go in from the top, and I know it's not going to be fully centered top to bottom, but that's okay, because I just want a little bit of the light coming out the sides. So there's one on that side. Remember, we're leaving this one solid, so I'm going to do it on this side. Don't think, just be careful. Think about how that box is going to go together, because I want this one coming in from the top, not in from the bottom. And voila. Our pieces are all now prepped. What's this? Now we can start assembling. So I'm going to flip these over. I want my box to come together like this. So this little 1/2-inch flap is actually going to line up right with that 1/2-inch border that I had on that square. For size reasons, I've just grabbed 1/4-inch score tape because I know it's going to fit within my window. So on that one side, I'm going to just put a strip of score tape, tear it off. And here's a trick for lining things up when you've got these little flaps. I want this sticky piece to touch here, but ultimately I want that fold to be the edge. So I have folded back my sticky piece. I'm lining it up here. This way I can see everything the way I want to see it. And then I'm just going to fold that over. And we are perfectly lined up. Now you would think the next step would be go like this. We're not going to do that yet because we want to put our alcohol ink panels inside first. Trust me, it's much, much easier to do it when it's flat. So this time I've just grabbed some really thin score tape. I'm going to grab my vellum pieces. So my acetate ones are dry too. Decisions. No, you know what? I think I'm going to stay with my vellum, but you're welcome to use whichever ones that you like the best, or feel free to mix and match. So I'm just going to use my score tape, and I'm going to put my tape onto my paper instead of onto my acetate. Whoops. And I'm just going to go around all 4 sides of each square. And that's why I love this score tape, because it just tears so easily. You don't need scissors. You can just kind of go whoop, 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 and move it along. For right now, I'm leaving the backings on just so that it stays sticky. And my last panel. All right. Now I have to decide which one's going to go where. I like this one for the front. I'm going to put this one up in here. And last but not least, this guy is going to come over on this side. And because it's translucent, or with the acetate it's clear, you can see where your circle is going to be or your opening is going to be. So feel free to move things around. Okay, I think that's going to be the best. Kind of looks like a sunrise. Or, you know what, I'm cheating. I'm going to grab my sample one. There we go. So now you can just go panel by panel, peel up your tape backing. And I honestly don't know that there is a right side and a wrong side. I think this is my right side because it's a little bit shinier. So yeah, the right side facing out does give you a little bit more vibrance, but if you like the look of it being a little bit softer, go nuts. So my tape is peeled up. I'm going to remember which way I had this. This way, that because your piece is just a little bit smaller than your square, it should nestle right in between all your score lines and give it a little rub. Move on to your middle panel. And that'll nestle right in between your score lines. Give it a little burnish. Sorry, I'm earthquaking the table again. And then our last panel. So now when you flip it all over, look at how pretty that is. So I'm going to show you one more thing before we close up the box. I went ahead and got a sentiment die and die cut out the words for someone special. So this way you could also make this double as a card, or if you're doing table settings and you wanted to have that on there. I am going to stick that right down in the middle of my front panel. I have my friends, the sticky specks. We all love the sticky specks. Come on, I'm having trouble with my fingers this morning. So I'm going to peel up my backing, stick my little guy down. Give it a little rub. Sorry for the earthquake. When it's a new sheet, it's always super sticky. There we go. And now the final assembly. So I'm just going to put this is where my last little skinny panel is. Throw a piece of tape on there. And once again, I'm going to do that little folding technique. So this time I'm going to fold this panel in like so. I'm going to fold this panel in like so. Remove that tape. So that side down, that side over. Your score lines should all line up perfectly. And then pop your box. Let's crack open these little tea lights. They don't have to be silver. Mine just happens to be what I grabbed this morning from my mustache. Pull out that little thing for the battery. My light's lighting up, and this is going to be hard to show on the side, but now your little luminary can go inside and just light up all of those alcohol inks. And wouldn't that just look so pretty on your Thanksgiving table? And it peeks through the side. Now, you can get way more creative than what I have done here this morning. You could add some fall leaves, die cuts. You could, if you were doing more of a winter one, you could, I thought I grabbed some snowflakes. You could put snowflakes on there. We have this gorgeous die from Tootie that is like a forest with the deer. Wouldn't that look really pretty on the front here? What else did I bring up? I've got another deer die. So you could really make some pretty silhouette type scenes on all of these. And hey, if you are really ambitious, you by all means could do your backside as well. I just liked having a little bit more stability to that. And then you pop your tea light inside. So that's it, ladies, for our Thanksgiving edition of our mini Zoom class. We will do our best to get this up on YouTube quickly, but because it is Thanksgiving, it might take us a couple more days. There we go, it's lit up again. And I wish you all a very awesome, awesome holiday weekend. So I'm just gonna stop the recording, and if there are any additional questions, we can cover that off. Thank you so much, ladies, for tuning in this morning.
Thanks, Sherry.